Shalom, everyone. My name is Teresa. I've been to Israel 9 times, and it's one of my favorite places to be. You get to see the Bible come to life, and the food there is amazing. I want to bring some of those flavors to my own kitchen. I'm not a professional, but I love to cook and bake. Most of all, I love to learn. So, let's explore the flavors of the Holy Land together. The big cities of modern-day Israel are melting pots of culture. On the same streets, you can see people from every nation walking alongside the locals and ultra-Orthodox. With so many Jewish people returning to their God-given homeland, as well as crowds of international tourists from the global community, it's no wonder that you can find all kinds of delicious food in the restaurants and markets. But if you're walking in the more Jewish part of the country, you'll notice something interesting. Some restaurants will be marked as kosher and are either meat only or dairy only. That is because more observant Jews will not mix meat and dairy in one meal. This comes from the verse that says, "Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk," which appears in both Exodus and Deuteronomy. The kosher McDonald's in Jerusalem, for example, has no cheese on its burgers, and all its coffee is served out of a small room in a separate section. But what exactly does kosher mean? To find out, we're going to go back to our Bibles. I've got mine right here. We're going to just be looking specifically at Leviticus chapter 11 and Deuteronomy chapter 14. Now, in my Bible, and probably yours as well, instead of kosher and unkosher, you're probably going to see the words clean and unclean. That's because kosher in Hebrew means fit or proper, and in English, that's often translated as clean. Let's do a quick summary. These chapters can be condensed into the following verses. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 46 and 47 say, "These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves about in the water, and every creature that moves along the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten." And in Deuteronomy chapter 14, 2 through 3, it says, "For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. Out of all the peoples on the face of the earth, the Lord has chosen you to be his treasured possession. Do not eat any detestable thing. On land, animals that have a separate hoof that is completely divided and chew their cud are okay to eat. These include cows, goats, sheep, and deer. If they only meet one condition, they are considered unclean, meaning animals like pigs, rabbits, and camels, as well as any rodent or land animal with paws. Reptiles and amphibians should also not be eaten. In the water, anything with fins and scales can be eaten, so that includes most fish. But if it's missing fins or scales, it's not kosher. So eels, catfish, sharks, lobsters, shrimps, jellyfish, scallops, clams, and other shellfish are off the menu. If we look to the air, these passages will list some familiar birds, like chickens, quails, ducks, and doves. And if bugs are your thing, grasshoppers, crickets, and locusts are kosher because they have jointed legs and jump. Unclean birds include hawks, vultures, pelicans, and ravens. Bats, as well as any insect without jointed legs, are also not to be eaten. There are more animals listed in the Bible than I've said here, and obviously not every creature in the world is mentioned. Therefore, Jewish rabbis have done their best over the years to use these as guidelines. Trust me, there have been some debates. By the way, fruits and veggies are always on the table, and good for you too. And since eggs, fish, fruit, and vegetables are parve, or neutral, you can find them everywhere. Before we continue, let's have a quick chat. Now, over the years, many people have tried to explain why God set up these guidelines. After all, most people don't like it when somebody else tells them what they can and cannot eat, so God must have had a reason. The most popular theories all revolve around health, that God wanted his people to be healthy. Many of the animals, birds, and fish that are forbidden or unclean are scavengers, meaning they eat dead and decaying and sometimes sick things, and they live in very unhygienic conditions. If you are what you eat, that's a little bit of a problem. Others say it's because that as Israel entered into the Promised Land, they were going to be surrounded by idol-worshipping nations that ate those things. So this was God's way to set them apart. They all have their point. But sometimes at the end of the day, it's just as simple as God said it, so I'm going to do it. I love him, so I will obey. Yeshua, or Jesus, even says in John 14:15, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. Personally, I've been trying to keep biblically kosher for about 5 years now. It's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it. It's a reminder of the one I belong to every time I sit down to a meal or open a menu or look at a food label in the grocery store. And in a world full of distractions, that little reminder is priceless. Okay, back to the video. So what can you eat? The good news is many, many delicious things. Now that we have a basic understanding of what is clean and unclean, let's make a simple, delicious dish that reminds me of Israel and is also kosher, not to mention parve. Today, we will be making shakshuka, a common egg and tomato sauce dish found in Israel. The name most likely derives from the Arabic word for shaken up or a mixture. Originally, it was made with mixed vegetables and some kind of chopped meat or liver, because tomatoes and bell peppers are from the New World and weren't introduced to Europe and Africa until the 1500s. Over the years, the dish changed forms and flavors as it traveled with people and ingredients were swapped out or replaced entirely. The version of shakshuka we are familiar with today is vegetarian and full of those New World tomatoes. You will need the following ingredients: 4 to 5 large eggs, very ripe tomatoes, chopped up and de-seeded. You will need about 4 cups chopped tomatoes, 1 small onion that has been peeled and diced, 1 large red or green bell pepper also diced, 2 cloves of finely chopped garlic. If you like garlic, you can add up to 4 cloves. You will also need 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, chopped parsley or cilantro to garnish, a pinch of sugar to taste in case your tomatoes are sour, olive oil, and salt and pepper to taste. Now let's talk spices. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of ground cumin and 1 tablespoon of harissa. Harissa is a hot chili pepper paste, usually made from dried peppers that have been rehydrated and blended with olive oil and toasted spices. Originally, harissa is from Tunisia, but now it's a staple of most of the northern African countries that border the Mediterranean. It can come as a thick paste, a sauce, or in a powder form, which is what I was able to find. If you are unable to find harissa, you can substitute it with 1 teaspoon smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon ground coriander, and 1 teaspoon chili powder to taste. You're going to need a large frying pan or cast iron skillet. In your pan, you're going to warm up the olive oil and then saute the onions until they begin to soften. At that point, you're going to add garlic. Let them get to know each other. Now add the tomato paste, chopped peppers, cumin, harissa, and salt. Again, if you don't have harissa, this is where you're adding your other spices. Stir and cook over medium heat until the peppers are soft. This will take about 8 to 10 minutes. You can cover with a lid temporarily to speed things up as well. Now you're going to add your tomatoes and bring everything to a gentle simmer. If you want to save time or you don't have access to fresh tomatoes, canned or boxed chopped tomatoes work just as well. You're going to cook until it becomes a thick sauce, about 8 to 10 minutes. Don't forget to taste as you go. Some of you might like things more spicy, some of you might like it more salty, so adjust it according to what you like. If your tomatoes are a bit sour, you're going to want to add some sugar at this point. The tomatoes in Israel are always extremely sweet. I asked someone why that is, because in America, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes they're sweet, sometimes they're not. My friend told me it's because in Israel they wait until they're fully ripe on the vine, so you get sun-ripened sweet tomatoes. Add more seasoning to taste. Once your sauce is ready, you're going to make a well in the sauce for each egg. I recommend cracking the egg in a separate bowl first, because that way you can make sure it's a good egg, you didn't get any shell in it, and that your yolk is intact. 1 egg into each well. Be careful not to break the yolk. Using a fork or chopstick, swirl the whites of the eggs into the sauce a little bit. Now we're going to simmer at a low heat for about 10 to 15 minutes until the egg whites are set and the yolks are still runny. If you're impatient like I am, you can cover the pan with a lid to help speed up the process. Check occasionally to make sure the sauce isn't reducing too much. Remember, nobody wants fire and smoke with their breakfast. Remove from heat and let settle for a few minutes before garnishing and serving. And there we go. I'll be honest, I did want to try and get picture-perfect eggs, so I did this again. Only this time I didn't cover the eggs the whole time they were simmering in the sauce, and they look great. In Israel, you may also see something called green shakshuka on the menu. This is one of the more modern versions of this traditional dish and involves swapping out those tomatoes with green leafy vegetables, like spinach, for a healthier punch. For our green shakshuka, we're going to need olive oil, half a large onion chopped, 3 cloves of garlic minced, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 4 to 5 eggs again, half a teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. We will need 6 cups of packed leafy greens. Spinach is the most popular option, but you can also use kale, chard, bok choy, zucchini, green bell peppers, peas, broccoli, or a mixture of any of them. Basically whatever you have in the fridge. You will also need half a cup of fresh herbs. Also red pepper flakes or cayenne pepper if you like it spicy. The steps for a green shakshuka are pretty much the same. You're just replacing the tomatoes with your leafy greens. And if you feel like your pan is getting too dry, a splash of water should help. And there we go, delicious and healthy. And that's all for today. Enjoy! B'tayavon. Bye!